When most people think of Oregon, they think of year-round rain, the Oregon Trail, and the great outdoors. But with every natural wonder and historic landmark, Oregon has creepy tales and eerie urban legends just below the surface. Urban legends are definitely interesting because they seem to have a life of their own and tend to change slightly with every time it's retold. The Beaver State has its own unique legends, from hauntings to witchcraft. And today we will explore 10 of the many urban legends Oregon has to offer. The Heceta Head Lighthouse was constructed in 1892 and named after the Spanish explorer Bruno de Heceta, who explored the area in the late 18th century. The land the lighthouse is on originally belonged to the Sislaw natives, who would hunt sea lions and gather seabird eggs. There is also a native legend attached to the area. According to that legend, the animal people built a stone wall, now cliffs, and used it to trick the grizzly bear brothers to fall to their deaths. The main haunting of Heceta Head is not the lighthouse, but the house that was the old keeper's house. It is reported that the spirit by the name of Rue is the mother of a child who is buried on the property. Legends say that Rue was the wife of an assistant lighthouse keeper whose daughter either wandered off the cliffs to her death or drowned in a nearby pond. After the child's death, Rue took her own life. Legends date back to at least the 1950s, when people staying at the house started reporting strange, unexplainable sounds, objects moving on their own, and screams of horror in the night. Rue is also believed to be responsible for rattling dishes in the kitchen and causing lights to flicker on calm nights. She is even known to open locked doors and leave them standing wide open. There is also the spirit of the Gray Lady at Heceta Head. Some people believe she may be the spirit of Rue. The Gray Lady appears as a misty figure that floats around the grounds and the house. She has also appeared as a silent apparition. A story about the Gray Lady in the 1970s says that during renovations, a man that was painting the attic saw the Gray Lady and fled. He refused to go back to the attic. He was reassigned outside because of an accident that broke the attic window. The man replaced the window but refused to go back inside and clean up the broken glass. That night, the owners heard a strange scraping noise in the attic, and the next morning, all the glass had been swept into a neat pile. There have been over 100 reported sightings of the Heceta Head ghost. There was even an article in Life magazine dealing with the case. During the 1800s, many women were accused of being a witch. It didn't matter if it was true or not. The accused women were tortured until they confessed, then put to death. Such is the case of a woman who lived in Lafayette, Oregon during that time period. To this day, her identity is still a mystery. According to legends, the accused woman was put to death by hanging. Fortunately for her, this was the less brutal method used on witches, but it seems she is still holding a grudge. The Lafayette Cemetery is known to have several spirits, but the most well-known and frightening is the spirit of the witch who makes her presence known day or night. Visitors to the cemetery have reported the witch's apparition either standing silently or roaming the grounds. Some people claim she laughed at them and then chased them out of the cemetery. One EVP cult here said, "Run home." But these are not the only reports of the Lafayette Cemetery witch. Many reports claim the witch got physical with them, chasing them out of the cemetery and then leaving deep cuts across their backs. The cemetery still stands today, and there are continued reports at the Lafayette Cemetery about the witch. Recently, though, the cemetery put a no trespassing rule into effect. As people gather in the many shops and restaurants in downtown Portland, many are unaware of what lies under their feet. Under the ground is a series of 150-year-old tunnels that connect the basements of the city's oldest buildings to the Willamette River and Portland's Chinatown. The tunnels were built by the Chinese at the time when Chinatown was the center for trade business. They were originally used to transport goods from cargo ships to the city to help make transportation easier for ship crews by avoiding inner-city traffic. It also helped businesses because most of their goods were stored in the basements anyway. But little did they know, the tunnels were also used for more corrupt things. With Portland being a small town at the time, it did have a large port that could support many ships. Many of those ships would sail for months at a time before unloading in Portland, which gave sailors only a short window of downtime before having to sail again. Most of the sailors spent what little downtime they had drinking at the bars and saloons. Some sailors even took the opportunity to leave behind their life at sea for fear of death from disease or injury, which would leave their captains with an empty position that needed filled right away in order to set sail again. A lot of men were reluctant to sign up for long voyages, so many captains stooped to hire men to Shanghai replacement sailors for $50 a head. Men looking to make a quick buck would prowl Portland's bars, saloons, and taverns, looking for able-bodied young men who were alone. The Shanghaiers would wait until their target was drunk and take him to the basement and knock him out. The unconscious man would then be dragged through the tunnels to the docks and would most often end up choosing labor over starvation. There were some who did manage to escape and warn the public about what was happening. As the stories got around Portland, it soon became harder to kidnap men, and many turned their sights to women who frequented the bars alone. Many of Portland's bars had trap doors that were sprung on unsuspecting women, and once they fell in, it was almost impossible to escape. Many prostitution rings would use the tunnels to hold groups of women until buyers were found outside of Portland. The Chinese gangs were also known to Shanghai people after doping them. The Chinese gangs would often have their own separate tunnels and would smuggle immigrants and drugs into the city. The many bars and brothels learned of this and soon also started receiving goods and people through their own personal tunnels and trapdoors. During Prohibition, the tunnels became an underground expressway where Shanghaiers transported alcohol shipments from the river to the bars and restaurants. The bars and saloons started using the secured passages to conduct their businesses away from prying eyes because the police often raided their establishments daily. Bar owners also began stashing their alcohol deep within the Shanghai tunnels to avoid arrest. With daily raids of large groups of police, the trapdoors in the establishments were often used to hide their associates who were on the run. Once the police left, the criminal would return to the bar for another drink. When the police realized what was happening, they started searching the tunnels, but were often unsuccessful because of the tunnel's expansiveness. The gangs and bars had long ago mapped out the underground passageways. During the height of its operation, it is estimated that more than 2,000 people a year were shanghaied through the Portland tunnels, with many never making it out alive. A lot of the victims were beaten, stabbed, or left for dead deep in the tunnels. The gangs used the tunnels as hideouts and would drag their victims down to keep them from talking to the police. They were also known to keep disobedient members in tunnels as punishment. Sometimes the gangs would come back and sometimes not. Many of the tunnels would go on for miles, making it easy to get lost, especially in the dark. It should come as no surprise that the Shanghai tunnels is one of the most haunted places on the planet. Many visitors have reported feeling like they were being watched by someone in the shadows. There are also reports of an Asian man walking past people visiting the tunnel. Explorers have nicknamed him Sam and believe he is responsible for turning off the lights in bar basements. Sam is also said to like to move things around the tunnels when people walk by. Sam is said to be a good spirit, but there is also trickster ghosts who love to toy with people by tugging on their shirts and hair. There is also said to be the spirit of a young woman named Nina that haunts the area of Old Town Pizza. Locals say she was a prostitute that was drugged and then thrown down the shaft and died as a result. Many people claim to smell her perfume in the tunnel as well as the restaurant. She is also said to tug on clothing of people as they pass through the tunnel. Some have claimed to see her apparition, and there are also reports of disembodied moans, talking, screaming, and crying heard throughout the tunnels. The Fairview Training Facility was a state-run facility for people with developmental disabilities with a very dark past. The many unspeakable things that took place here will make the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. Established in 1907 as a state institute for the feeble-minded, Fairview opened its doors on December 1, 1908, with 39 patients transferred from the Oregon State Asylum. By 1981, there were more than 1,300 people with developmental disabilities living here. For decades, they were referred to as inmates. Former residents tell stories of being disciplined with leather cuffs, razor straps, cow whips, and even being locked in cages and closets. There were also more than 2,600 forced sterilizations. Vasectomies, forced hysterectomies, tubal ligations, and even castrations were required for patients to leave the facilities all the way through the 1970s. The American Journal of Forensic Medicine and Pathology found that between 1963 and 1987, residents of Fairview were more than twice as likely to die of unnatural causes as the people in Marion County not institutionalized. When the U.S. Department of Justice and Healthcare Financing Administration finally investigated, they were appalled and federal funding immediately stopped. Fairview Training Facility finally closed its doors in 2000. There have been many reports of strange happenings in and around the property. There are frequent reports of a female apparition wandering the grounds at night, usually near one of the cottages on the grounds. There are also reports of a male spirit passing through the kitchen of the Holderness Cottage. This area was used to house the most aggressive residents, but most who see this apparition claim he is not threatening. Most of the time, he doesn't even notice the living is there. Another hot spot is the Withacombe Cottage, or more accurately, the old cistern there, which is the site of a tragedy in 1923. Holly Pollock, a resident of Fairview, went missing. It was assumed she had run away. About 3 weeks later, pieces of hair and skin started to come through the water pipes. When the cistern was checked, they found Holly's body inside, having drowned. Holly's spirit is said to still linger around the old cistern. Hot Lake Hotel is located in Union County, Oregon, and gets its name from the nearby thermal spring lake. The area was once a popular place for Native Americans who believed the thermal waters had healing properties. Known by the natives as the Valley of Peace and an integral part to the people, it was declared neutral ground and conflict between the tribes was strictly forbidden here. In 1864, Samuel Fitzgerald Newhart built a wooden building facing the bluff, which resembled the modern-day shopping mall. The building had many different businesses, including a post office, barbershop, dance hall, bathhouse, and a blacksmith. In 1884, when the Union Pacific Railroad came close by, it put Hot Lake on the map. Soon, the old wooden building was demolished, and in 1903, a luxurious hotel was built in its place. In 1903, Dr. W.T. Fye became involved with the hotel construction and had 65,000 square foot brick building added to the hotel. When it was finally opened, it had 105 guest rooms, a 60-bed surgical ward, a ballroom, a confectionery, a drugstore, a newsstand, reception rooms, laboratories, and a commissary. It also had specialized soaking tubs that were filled with lake water and an operating room with an elevated observation deck. The property also produced its own vegetables, dairy, meat, and eggs right there and made it almost completely self-sufficient. It became known as Town Under One Roof. Dr. Fye purchased the entire property in 1917 and renamed it Hot Lake Sanatorium. From then on, it was not only a resort for the rich, but a hospital where groundbreaking experimental medicine practices were done using geothermal waters from the spring. Dr. Fye and his team were celebrated for their success, treating the common health issues which attracted the attention of the Mayo brothers and eventually earned the hospital the nickname Mayo Clinic of the West. Unfortunately, Dr. Fye was not a good man. It is rumored that he was arrogant and often seduced his female patients. He also refused to socialize in any way with his employees. Dr. Fye died in 1931 of pneumonia. On May 7, 1934, the western wing of the hotel burnt to the ground, leaving only the brick building. Eventually, only the third-floor hospital area was the only thing able to continue business. During World War II, the property was used as a nurses' training center and flight school. During the darker times, the foyer was said to have been used to house corpses of those affected during the winter typhoid epidemic because the ground was too hard to dig for graves. In 1951, the building was turned into a nursing home and then later an asylum. It remained an asylum until 1974, when it was purchased again and turned into a restaurant and nightclub. After only 2 years, it shut down. It was at this time the owner and caretakers of the building started to talk about the strange things that had been happening at the old health resort. The building was sold again in the mid-1980s, and a corner of it was turned into a bathhouse, but in 1991 it was closed and the building stayed abandoned for 15 years. People who explored the property during this time reported the apparition of a man lingering in the shadows, often carrying a spade. He is believed to be the spirit of an old gardener who committed suicide by hanging himself in the grand ballroom. Some even say he jumped from the upper levels of the building. Other reports tell of people seeing a small boy running across the hotel top floor, laughing and playing. It is reported that from the left side, the boy looks normal, but the right side, he appears badly burned. Many people believe he may have died during the 1934 fire. There are also stories that say if you wait on the staircase too long on the second floor, you will see the apparition of an old woman muttering to herself as she climbs the stairs. Rocking chairs are also said to move on their own, and the old piano that formerly belonged to Robert E. Lee's wife can be heard playing by itself on the third floor. There are also reports of old asylum patients seen staring out the upstairs windows and whispering unintelligibly. If that wasn't enough, it is also said that sometimes you can hear the disembodied screams and weeping coming from the old operating theater. The building was once again sold in 2003, and the new owners restored the building. It was finally opened in 2005, but in 2008, the west wing of the building collapsed. Finally, in 2010, it was opened as a bed and breakfast with 22 guest rooms, a spa, art gallery, restaurant, and a small museum. Built in the 1800s, Oregon State Hospital has a dark past that went on for years. Today, many of the original parts of the hospital are still in use, while others are closed off to severe despair. The new wing that was built in 2011 is where most of the patients' care now takes place. When the hospital was first built, it was intended to serve all patients. Soon, it became overcrowded, and because of this, it became a more specialized facility serving the mentally and criminally insane. Oregon State Hospital was built in 1883 and has many stories to tell. Like other old asylums, the patients often fell victim to medical practices not acceptable by today's standards. Through the years, patients experienced horrible experiments, abuse, and even torture from both staff and fellow patients. It is estimated that hundreds, if not thousands, of patients died in the asylum. It should come as no surprise that Oregon State Hospital has a reputation of housing so many tortured souls. These days, the original hospital is no longer taking patients, but it is still in business. Today, it is mostly a museum. Touring Oregon State Hospital gives you an accurate perspective at the people who were once housed here, as well as the cruel treatments they endured at the hands of doctors who do not have their patients' best interest at heart. Exhibits fill the halls of the museum that were once filled with patients. In the exhibits, visitors can see an overview of how procedures for treating the mentally ill have changed over the years, from its opening in the 1880s to the present day. Although the rooms have been remodeled, there is still a creepy presence that lingers throughout. What does remain within the walls of Oregon State Hospital, including the creepy underground tunnels, has created an environment, and those who have explored report feeling an overwhelming sense of evil. According to legends, the tunnels were where violent patients were transported to various parts of the buildings. Evidence also suggests that the tunnels were used for immoral, unethical, and barbaric medical experiments. This all took place underground so the patient's screams could not be heard. Throughout the hospital, phantom footsteps can be heard, doors open and close on their own, and the screams and cries from former patients have been heard. Many people believe a lot of the unrest may be due to the hospital staff losing over 1,500 cans of patient cremated remains. Wolf Creek Inn was built in 1883 and is the oldest continuously operating hotel in the Northwest. The inn is rich in history as well as paranormal activity. Throughout the years, there have been many famous people to stay here, including President Rutherford B. Hayes, John Wayne, Orson Welles, Mary Pickford, Sinclair Lewis, Clark Gable, and Jack London. Wolf Creek Inn was the author Jack London's favorite place. He would visit often, even staying a whole summer once. He always stayed in the same room where he is said to have returned after his death. Jack's room has been preserved and is open for guests to see, but not to stay in. People have reported seeing his apparition standing in his room and even heard his voice. Jack is not the only spirit reported to haunt the Wolf Creek Inn. There are reports of a female stagecoach driver seen on the main floor common area. Like all the other spirits of the inn, she is not scary, but rather seems to be keeping an eye on things. There is also a young woman seen and heard in the hallways by Clark Gable's suite. She is believed to be the daughter of a previous owner and seems pleasant and happy. Guests have reported hearing her sing through the halls throughout the night. The spirit of an older man is reported to wander the halls and the common area as well. He is believed to be a former guest that liked Wolf Creek Inn so much that he also returned after his death. Then you have the ghoulish entity that has been reported to be seen on the grounds and the main floor of the building. It is reported to be some sort of creature or small human with vampire-like fangs and blood around his mouth. Although he is scary looking, it is believed he does not have evil intentions. Other than apparitions, guests and staff have reported strange occurrences in rooms that are empty. The piano on the main floor is reported to often play by itself. Chairs and furniture get mysteriously rearranged in the middle of the night, and objects on tabletops disappear, only to be found in different areas throughout the inn. Kitchen staff have also reported items flying off hooks and the feeling of someone brushing up against them while they cook. Built in the 1920s in Forest, Oregon, this historic hotel was once a Masonic and Eastern Star property that was built to house the poor, sick, and elderly Masons and their families. On the grounds is also a children's cottage that was used to house the orphans of Masons. The Masonic and Eastern Star home relocated to a new facility in 1999. The new owner, McMenamins, renovated the building and turned it into the hotel it is today. According to legends, there have been many strange apparitions and occurrences reported at the Grand Lodge. Some of the hot spots are a couple of rooms in the main lodge, especially room 215, the second and third floor hallways, the gift shop, the doctor's office bar, the Equinox meeting room, and the Billy Scott meeting room, as well as the children's cottage. Some of the most frequent reports from staff and visitors are of odd smells, locked doors unlocking by themselves from the inside, cold spots, phantom footsteps, playful movements of objects from one location to another, knocking, disembodied whispering, laughing, and the uneasy feeling of being stalked. There is also an apparition of an elderly woman often reported, known as the Lavender Lady, and also an old man, a doctor who likes to play tricks on people by moving items. Other apparitions reported included children-shaped shadows darting in and out of rooms in the children's cottage. The apparitions are reported to be seen mostly at night, unless you are in the basement, where they appear at any time. There is also a portrait of one of the apparitions that has been seen by many employees on display in the 1922 Grand Lodge. The ghost is a white-haired woman in a print dress and slippers. Reports say she strongly resembles a woman named Anna who lived in the building for many years. Malheur Butte is an extinct volcano that was once called Kennedy Butte. This landmark stands like a tower over the surrounding plains and has been part of native lore through the region. According to native legends, Malheur Butte was a home of ancient spirits in the realm of magic. Although the volcano is long extinct, the legends and mysteries are very much alive today. One of the most popular legends surrounding Malheur Butte is that the place is where a large coven of witches from across the land would gather and carry out dark rituals. Many people believe with the volcano and the nearby Snake River, there is some sort of nexus point of mystical energy. The witches have been blamed for a large number of reported missing travelers in the area and said they were used as human sacrifices. Witches are still reported to be seen in the area at night. There have also been reports of shadowy robed figures and disembodied evil laughter. Another strange phenomenon reported is of small impish shadow people. They are said to be about the size of a small dog, more or less humanoid in shape, with scrawny long limbs, oversized heads, and elongated faces. They were reported to dart around the area and hide behind rocks. They have also been reported to chase visitors off, even running after cars. Shrilly howls have also been reported. The Elsinore Theater was built in 1926 as a movie theater and was restored in 2004 as a nonprofit. The current theater has a 1,200-seat auditorium and is designed to resemble the castle in Shakespeare's Hamlet. The purpose of the Elsinore Theater is to offer arts and cultural performances that enhance the quality of life in Oregon's capital city, but it offers much more than that. According to legends, the Elsinore Theater is haunted by a couple of spirits. One spirit is believed to be of a little boy who was murdered in the men's bathroom. People have reported that when looking into the mirror, blood spatters can be seen in the reflection, but when they turn around, there is no blood in the room. Another legend says that a former owner's daughter died from falling off the balcony, and she is reported to be seen on said balcony.